So we've done endoscopy, CT scan, and PET scan. What comes next? Not the most pleasant one. Colonoscopy. Now they need me to see inside from the other end. Now, when they told me that they want to do this, I must admit that was sort of both fear and maybe something positive that went through my head. So I was a bit confused as to whether or not it was something I was looking forward to or scared. I mean, with the best will in the world, no, it wasn't something I was looking forward to in the slightest. But I've always had a digestive problem. I mean, I suffer from severe constipation ever since I was newly born. And so it's not my diet as such, it's something wrong with the digestive system. It has caused me problems throughout my life, but I've known how to manage it, and that is I have to have a very high diet of fibre. And whilst it doesn't keep me consistent and, on there, it does allow me to clear out my bowels from time to time. So colonoscopy, yeah, that's where the camera goes up through your anus and starts having a look at your large intestine or colon. And I assumed that from the PET scan, from the CT scan, that something had been seen. Now I was wondering, was that something to do with my digestion, or had, the worst possible thing, something had spread, a cancer had grown in my bowel. So obviously they'd seen something and they wanted to find out what it was. So I've mentioned before my problem of claustrophobia. But this really wasn't so much about claustrophobia, this was basically about fear. So I said, yeah, I need some form of sedation, but I didn't need knocking out. So they gave me gas and air, and basically as though I was having a baby. And when I was wheeled into the theatre, they gave me just a simple mouthpiece so I could draw out the gas and air as and when I wanted. And I must admit, as we were getting closer, I was testing it. And just to be perfectly honest, it had absolutely no effect whatsoever. I don't know why, but this was not something that was going to trigger my claustrophobia, so I wasn't overly worried. Yeah, right. Until later, and not so much worried. But yeah, so I went through all the same questions. Have you, what illness is it? And every time I go on one of these things, whatever it is, they ask me. So the person before, then when we were in there, they ask you again, all the same sort of questions. And I sort of said, isn't it about time that you actually started to keep a record of me answering this already? But I understand. It's not about checking things. It's making certain that the right person is there and that he hasn't missed or she hasn't missed out something that could be very critical. Now, at a later event, it was pointed out that the anaesthetist needed to know about my sleep apnea, which I've been talking to people about it. So it was critical to know these things. I mean, I obviously knew about the claustrophobia and the various other things, but different things require them to know different details. So it was important that I remembered to tell them everything that I could. Like I had an operation to remove a cyst, benign cyst from behind my clavicle. Yes, I'd had various things, but not many things in operating. So I'd had tooth out under anaesthetic, more than once actually. Um, but I remember going to Canterbury Hospital and having a general anaesthetic, but to this day I can't remember why. It's got to be in my records, but I literally cannot remember why I went to Canterbury Hospital for and it was put under anaesthetic. Anyway, the colonoscopy, oscopy, whatever. Now that really was uncomfortable. It got to the point where basically the camera wouldn't quite go round the corners easily, so this nurse had to basically push down on my stomach so that it was more firm and didn't move, and so they could get it round the corner. Now I'll tell you something. At the time, it was just feeling of somebody was squashing me, not much. Not too much pain inside or anything like that, but later I paid the price for that. Anyway, they got through, and one of the things is I noticed that I could see the cameras this time because I wasn't knocked out, I wasn't sedated, and so I was getting interested and seeing, and they found 4 polyps, and that's quite uncommon. He called that I can't remember what did he do, complicated or chaotic or something like that. But they don't normally see 4, and there was 4, and they were, they weren't little things. They took a biopsy of one of them, which upset my London treatment team, which hadn't been referred to yet. There was only one because one of them had been taken as a biopsy. They would have preferred that they took a biopsy of all 4, just in case one was and the others weren't, or 2. It might have been that they take the only one that wasn't cancerous, etc. So it was important. It was important thing that was missed, and perhaps should be considered in the future when people are taking biopsies on colonoscopies. Anyway, it didn't last that long. It got sorted. It did it. It wasn't pleasant, right? But the recovery was the worst, to be honest. I was taken back to the recovery ward, and I was bloated. I was, really, because what they do is when they put this camera in, they pump up your large intestine so that it can move through. I was full of wind. And basically, the recovery team kept telling me when I apologised, I would go, brr, brr. They said, "Oh, I'm sorry," and they said, "No, we want you to fart." And this is the only time I've ever been told that somebody wanted me to actually fart, which I must admit I did find quite amusing. But being a well-brought-up lad, I kept apologising as well. Anyway, you can't change who you are, can you? Yeah, it was really quite not nice from my point of view, and these staff in the recovery room were putting up with. I mean, there wasn't just me. There was other people coming into the recovery room after colonoscopy. So there was a thing. But oh yeah, finally, with all the burps, the pressure, the pain subsided, and the recovery nurse talked me through what had happened. which I find strange because on the previous scans, I was talked to by the people who gave me the scans. The on endoscopy, it was the top man, very nice man. On colonoscopy, the surgeon, when asked, "Do you want to speak to him?" he said no. So it was left to the nurse, who was a wonderful girl, wonderful girl. She looked after me exceedingly well, and explained everything that had been going on and so forth. That there were polyps. Showed me the thing where the doctor had written that taken a biopsy but does not seem to be cancerous, which is like, oh God, thank God, right? But again, as I said to you, my London team actually were not that happy about not taking the biopsies from the other three. But that's between them. It's not my, from my point of view, he did a good job. The nurse in recovery did, and the whole team of nurses that were in the recovery did a great job. Even the guy who had seen me at the very beginning came through and checked on me and so forth. So I felt really good about the treatment that I got from the endoscopy department, and in this particular case, it was the colonoscopy. But that it was relating to the whole of the endoscopy department. They did a very, very good job. They made you feel important, that they cared and were interested in your welfare. So hats off, congratulations all round. It was not an emotional time, except when I read not cancerous. That was my fear, that they had discovered cancer that had spread into the bowel from the esophagus, and that's a big step, and that would have changed massively the status of my cancer. So yes, that was a massive relief. Once the pain had stopped, I was reading the literature, and it said discomfort, that was the word used, discomfort may continue for 24 hours. And I thought, all the air had got out. But then when I stood up, I saw what I'd left on the bed, on the bed. It was disgusting, because it was, I think, what they call a wet one. And yeah, it wasn't very nice. But when I stood up, the pain had gone, and I was thinking, oh, well, that's fine, just a bit of discomfort, that's no problem. Because the air had gone, and most of it had gone, but I did realise when I stood up that there was still quite a lot of bloating. However, the discomfort referred to was not discomfort, because for the next 24 hours, not happening straight away, but once I'd got home, once I'd start relaxing, as the evening progressed, it was not discomfort. It was pain. It was really bad pain, because all of this air that had been pumped into me, and the bruising from forcing the camera around because it wasn't going around properly, probably due to my stature, as they say. So don't get me wrong, it's not their fault, it's my body, and I have abused it for a number of years, so consequently I take responsibility for that. So yeah, the pain was bad, and I was still releasing wind from the nether regions throughout the night. And bit by bit, that pain subsided as the gases within me were released. But it was not until sometime in the following day that it actually ceased to be painful. It was tender for longer because of the bruising. But it was fine. And the fact that the report said does not show any signs of cancer was like, oh my God, thank God. Because this is, when you've got these sort of diagnosis that you've got a cancer, the biggest fear is not the cancer itself, but is if it's spread. Because that is changes you from a totally different situation. It changes you from somebody who can definitely be helped to someone who may be able to be helped. So it's about that happy ending. It questions, when you've got spread, it questions whether or not there's going to be. And not saying there isn't, if there's spread, you can still have a happy ending. Don't get me wrong. So don't ever give up. Because I ain't giving up no matter, even if there are some spreading, and we'll cover that a bit in another episode because there is more to come. But yeah, I was happy. I was thinking maybe these polyps, when they're removed, because he couldn't remove them then because it basically I'd been under for too long, I think is what he was thinking. That, the recovery would be even more challenging if he tried to spend the extra time to take the polyps out. So I'm going to go back, right? And it all depends on the treatment as to when I'm going to go back and get that done. But it'll be done. And I'm hoping that will help my digestive system, though they deny any likelihood of that changing what happens in my system. Well, I can still hope, can't I? Because a lot of medicine still is not based on facts, it's based on hope. Right? And as a patient, I don't know the facts. So I have to have hope. So the colonoscopy is good news. Let's see what comes next. Thank you for listening.